Hello, Jonathan. I was wondering if you'd seen the clip portion that I put out there where everybody can see your friend Brian Dindalinger, where he's standing in front of a whole wall of bookshelves that looks to me to be filled with nothing but counterfeit Bibles. But you say that because your friend Brian Dindalinger here is exposing all those counterfeit Bibles and books that he uses, that he's got some sort of pass or something from you, and that what he's doing is perfectly fine in your eyes. Whereas when it comes to me and my Bibles and books that I've collected along the way, you get to describe me as being evil because you say that I'm promoting all of those books instead of doing what your good friend Brian Dundalinger does. So let me ask you something here, Jonathan. How do you feel about good old Mr. Dundalinger today? Because I remember our first conversation when I asked you if you'd happen to have anybody that you'd recommend for me to watch, and the first and only name that came back to me was your friend Brian Dindalinger. And I think I've already told you in a previous video that I really didn't care too much for his arrogant teaching style, but I still watched him every now and again to try and see where you might be coming from on a few matters. But he always seems like he's way out there in La La Land for me to try to watch too much of his stuff. And I was surprised to find out that you'd still recommended him, especially when I found out that he didn't even believe in the Trinity doctrine like you do. And then most recently, I watched a video that he was doing where he was comparing the Talmud to the 1611 KJV Bible, saying that the Talmudic Jewish soldiers are allowed to rape non-Jewish prisoners of war and how sick it all is. And I'm right there with him in the condemnation of every sick act that people are allowed to commit, all in the name of their God. So I'm going to play this short 7-minute clip that he put out. And if you could, at the end of this short presentation, Jonathan, if you could let me know if you agree with him or not.
Have you seen what's been going on over there in Gaza? A lot of the stories of soldiers doing less than ethical things to prisoners. What's the basis for that? Is it here in the Holy Bible? No, it's not. Especially because we're in the New Testament now. We're not in the Old Testament anymore. God is not dealing with the nation of Israel as a holy nation. Anybody can see that one. They're far from holy. But where did they get this thing from that they have a right to perversion with prisoners of war? Let me show you where they get it. It's from the Talmud. Okay, right here we have it. All right, let me show it to you on the overhead camera. Here you go. There you go. Page 132. Right down there. All right, check this out. But surely there is the allowance concerning a beautiful woman, a non-Jewish female prisoner of war. The Torah allows a Jewish soldier to take such a woman. No, it doesn't. According to some authorities, a Jew may engage in sexual relations with her during wartime. Uh-oh, wait a second. It says up here the Torah allows this. But then down here it says some authorities. Well, wait. If it's the Torah, if it's the Old Testament, the first 5 books of Moses, then why would it say some authorities? Doesn't make any sense. The Talmud overthrows the Scriptures. The Scriptures do not allow this. All right? It's talking about the one place in Scripture talks about the tribe of Benjamin, that they can go to Shiloh, and if they see young girls dancing, they can go and take them and make them into their wives. But it is not saying just anybody out in warfare, anywhere you are, you can do it anytime you want to. It's not what the Bible teaches. All right? The tribe of Benjamin was having hard times with, populating, being repopulated after God judged them. So they needed wives, and nobody wanted to give them wives, and that's why that was done. All right? And I'm not saying God was even for that. I'm saying that's why they did it. But it says here, sexual relations with her during wartime. So you can have relations with a non-Jewish female prisoner of war during times of war. Emergency war powers, sound familiar? And according to others, to convert and marry her as a, quote, concession to the evil inclination. Huh? You can have a concession to the evil inclination? You're giving in to your evil lusts? That's what they're saying here. Because your rabbi said it's okay. Your Talmudic rabbi said it's okay. This allowance is limited to Jews, but non-Jews are forbidden to take a woman in war because of their prohibition against robbery. Jews aren't prohibited against robbery. We'll see that here in a minute. As was explained earlier in the chapter 57a, thus we see that there can be something permitted to a Jew but forbidden to a non-Jew. Little interesting there. The Gemara answers, there the reason that a Jew is allowed to take a woman in war and a non-Jew is not allowed to do so is that non-Jews are not fit for wars of conquest. Okay, God shall enlarge Japheth. I think that's a prophecy of white Japhetic races being very good with wars of conquest, which history proves. Jews were commanded to conquer the land of Israel, but the other nations were not commanded to conquer lands. Really? Where does the Bible say that? Where does the scriptures say that non-Jews are not allowed to conquer? Where does it say that? Just making stuff up. They're lying. Since the allowance regarding a woman of beautiful appearance was only given in the context of a war of conquest, it could only have been given to Jews and not to non-Jews. Okay? Okay. We just read this. I didn't make that up. That's what the Talmud says right there. So if there's a non-Jew girl and she's over there in Israel or something, she's in Gaza and the Talmudic Jews get her and whatever. And again, they're not all Talmudists. All right, this is a really radical sect of satanic people that follow the Talmud. But if they're a practitioner of the Talmud, they see a beautiful girl that's a non-Jew and they say, I have to give in to my evil inclination here. Yeah. But now let's look about the thing of them stealing. Robbery is good for Jews, but not for non-Jews. Hello, Wall Street. All right. It says here, but surely there is robbery less than the value of pruta, I guess is how you say it, which is permitted to a Jew, but forbidden to a non-Jew. A Jew is, in other words, is permitted to steal if it's less than the value of a pruta, whatever that is. Jews are ready to waive less than a pruta, and so for them the act of stealing such a small amount is not regarded as robbery. But non-Jews are not ready to waive even the most minute amount, and so for them robbery of less than the value of a pruta is forbidden. So little Mordecai there, you're going through the store, you see a little stick of gum, a little bit something, it's not much, maybe less than $1, maybe less than $5. Just go ahead and steal it, okay? You take what you want, okay? You know what I'm saying? It's not robbery unless you see a non-Jew boy do it. The Denlinger kid, yeah, he's white and things. So, you see him, you cry out, he's a thief. Oh, arrest him. Oh, he's a non-Jew. He's stealing less than the value of a pruta, whatever that is. And these are God's people. These are the people that have a right to reject Jesus Christ, huh? Jesus was a bad man and all this other stuff. And yeah, okay. Yeah, all right, I get it. So that's going to be it for this one. Stealing is stealing. I don't care what the value of it is. If you're taking something that does not belong to you and not leaving adequate remuneration, that is theft. All right? Period. That's the way it works. And you will answer to God for it. Both non-Jews and Jews. Okay? Don't forget that.
So what do you think, Jonathan? Did you agree with him? Because I think you probably did. At least as far as saying that it was perfectly legal in the Talmudic God's eyes, that if you were to see a woman that you thought looked pretty hot, that you could just take her, basically kidnap her. Then you can marry her and then pretty much do anything that you wanted to do with her after that. And all of that's found in the Talmud, but not in the Holy Scriptures of the King James Bible, of course. So do you agree with good old Brian Dindelinger here on that stance, Jonathan? That your Lord God Jehovah would never even think to allow his people to do something that's so cruel and screwed up as to kidnap a woman if you felt like she was a woman that was beautiful enough to marry. Then you can carry her off, have sex with her, marry her, basically do whatever you want to with her, because after all, she is your slave now. Right, Jonathan?
Is it here? In the Holy Bible? No, it's not. No, it's not.
So are you going to be like Brian and lift your KJV far above the Talmud? Because of course, like I said, Jehovah would never have anything to do with such depravity like their false god would permit. Right, Jonathan?
You can have a concession to the evil inclination. You're giving in to your evil lusts. That's what they're saying here. because your rabbi said it's okay. Your Talmudic rabbi said it's okay.
So are you going to agree with Dindlinger or not? Personally, at least as far as I'm concerned, Brian Dindlinger is nothing but an absolute liar, because you very well can find almost the exact same wartime order coming down from Jehovah straight to his people in the Old Testament. So let's put it up there for everybody else to see and read, and then try to answer the same question for me if you could. Deuteronomy 21, verses 10 through 14. And what does the header already tell us? It says, marrying a captive woman. But wasn't that the same thing that Dindlinger said could only be found in the Talmud, and not the 1611 KJV? So why is this header name even here?
But where did they get this thing from that they have a right to perversion with prisoners of war? Let me show you where they get it. It's from the Talmud. It's from the Talmud.
Verse 10. When you go to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God delivers them into your hand, and you take them captive, if you see a beautiful woman among them, and you desire her and want to take her as your wife, then you shall bring her into your house.
But surely there is the allowance concerning a beautiful woman, a non-Jewish female prisoner of war.
She must shave her head, trim her nails, and put aside the clothing of her captivity. After she has lived in your house a full month and mourned her father and mother, you may have relations with her and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. And if you are not pleased with her, you are to let her go wherever she wishes. But you must not sell her for money or treat her as a slave, since you have dishonored her.
Is it here in the Holy Bible? No, it's not.
So Jonathan, Brian keeps insisting that none of these perverted directives can be found in the Holy Bible.
Doesn't make any sense. The Talmud overthrows the Scriptures. The Scriptures do not allow this. The Scriptures do not allow this.
But it seems to me that Deuteronomy 21, verses 10 through 14, they seem to have something else to say concerning the matter. Because the Talmud says that these instructions can be found in the Torah, which are the first 5 books of the Bible. Dindlinger says no. But isn't Deuteronomy part of the Torah? Why, yes it is. But again, Mr. Dindlinger says that it isn't anywhere in the KJV.
Okay. We just read this. I didn't make that up. That's what the Talmud says right there. That's what the Talmud says right there. So if there's a non-Jew girl and she's over there in Israel or something, she's in Gaza, and the Talmudic Jews get her and whatever. And again, they're not all Talmudists. All right, this is a really radical sect of satanic people that follow the Talmud. But if they're a practitioner of the Talmud, they see a beautiful girl that's a non-Jew and they say, I have to give in to my evil inclination here.
But who should we believe, Jonathan? Isn't Deuteronomy part of the Torah?
Doesn't make any sense. The Talmud overthrows the Scriptures. The Scriptures do not allow this. The Scriptures do not allow this.
So Jonathan, what do you think? Do you really think Dindlinger didn't know about Deuteronomy 21? Because I think he said that he's been teaching now for 25 years. So what do you think the odds are that he was just oblivious to all of this? What do you think, Jonathan? I mean, do you know any verses that are located in the 1611 authorized KJV where they're talking about scavenging up beautiful women who just happen to become a captive of war? And when that happens, all of a sudden, life is never going to be the same for her again. First off, once Jehovah's armies get through with murdering all of this young woman's family, and more than likely it was right in front of her, and once all the blood's been shed and everybody else in her family has just been violently raped and murdered, but because she's beautiful enough that some random soldier decides that he wants her to be his wife, and that's when the soldier gets to take her back to his home. He gets to shave all of her hair off her head, and then he has her cut and groom her fingernails. And then that's when she'll be forced to remove all of her clothing and put on the clothing of her captives. Now doesn't that sound like a nice love story starting up, Jonathan? So what are you thinking? Is this really what you're defending Jehovah from? Needless wars, murder, rape, sex trafficking. Yes, sex trafficking, because I still want to know what happened to the 32 little virgin girls that were given to Jehovah as his cut of the spoils. You never mention what he did with the 32 virgins, Jonathan. And then, after this young woman gets violently ripped out of her home, she gets allotted a whole 30 days to try and forget that the person that she's getting ready to be forcefully married to, that he was the one that you just witnessed butchering your mom and your dad, along with all your other relatives that were around you. Now that sounds like a pretty romantic courtship if I do say so myself. So what kind of engagement ring do you think he got for her, Jonathan? I mean, I bet it was a big old rock, eh? And then, like it couldn't get any worse, we see that that nice young soldier boy can actually get a do-over in love if he's not quite feeling it anymore. Yeah, he gets a new chance at love, and all he has to do to initiate that is to tell her that he's not pleased with her, and then send her on her merry way. That's it. Let her go wherever she wants to go. But there is a catch, and the only catch might be is that you have to freely let her go, and that's because you defiled her. So you're not allowed to sell her, as well as you're not allowed to treat her as a slave. But does that mean that he was treating her like a slave beforehand? I don't know. But this story sure does sound pretty much like the story in the Talmud. You know, the one that Mr. Dundelinger botched up on purpose. So how's about you, Jonathan? What do you think of Jehovah's law concerning soldiers being able to take beautiful women as captives of war and then marrying them? And what do you think about old Brian Dindelinger's mental capacity? I mean, I'm interested.
And according to others, to convert and marry her as a, quote, concession to the evil inclination. Huh? You can have a concession to the evil inclination? You're giving in to your evil lusts? That's what they're saying here. Because your rabbi said it's okay. Your Talmudic rabbi said it's okay.